The President. Good morning, members. This is the first council meeting of year 2023. I wish you an auspicious year, good health and success. On the path to normalcy, I encourage everyone to continue to strive for the well-being of Hong Kong people. Questions? Question 1, Mr. Yim Kong. Happy New Year to everyone. In November last year, the State Council introduced the quota-free scheme for Hong Kong private cars traveling to Guangdong via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, or the scheme, under which eligible Hong Kong private cars would be allowed to travel to and from Guangdong Province via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, or the HZMB, without any need to obtain regular quotas, so as to facilitate Hong Kong people to travel to and from Guangdong Province by self-drive mode for business, visiting relatives, or traveling on a short-term basis. The Hong Kong SAR government also announced at the end of last year that it would work out the specific implementation details of the scheme jointly with the Guangdong provincial government. In this connection, would the government inform this council, 1, to further facilitate business dealings with the Guangdong-Hong Kong Macau Greater Bay Area, whether the Hong Kong SAR government will discuss with the Guangdong provincial government the relaxation of the restrictions on the eligibility of vehicles and applicants under the scheme, so as to benefit more people who have close business dealings with Guangdong Province. Vehicles held in the names of companies, as well as people eligible to travel to and from the mainland who possess the status of Hong Kong residents but are not holding the mainland travel permits for Hong Kong and Macau residents, commonly known as home return permits for the time being. Say, for example, staff sent out by China Capital Enterprises. 2, as it is learned that there is still much room for growth in the traffic flow of the bridge, whether the Hong Kong SAR government will coordinate with the Guangdong provincial government the introduction of a monthly pass for the bridge to enable users to use the bridge at concessionary fares, with a view to enhancing the traffic efficiency of the bridge and encouraging more people to use the bridge to travel to and from Guangdong Province. And 3, to further facilitate Hong Kong private cars to travel to and from Guangdong Province, whether the government will actively promote the introduction of an innovative insurance product by the insurance sector, with protection covering traffic accidents which occur in both Hong Kong and Guangdong Province. Thank you, President. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, since its commissioning in October 2018, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, or the HZMB, has brought enormous opportunities for the connectivity within the GBA area, the GBA, and its overall development. The governments of Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau have been working closely to take forward various new cross-boundary transport measures, having regard to the capacity of relevant boundary control points and the respective connecting roads, with a view to increasing the number of vehicles using the bridge in a gradual and orderly manner. Before the pandemic, about 80,000 cross-boundary vehicles from Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau, including cross-boundary private cars and hire cars, port shuttle buses, cross-boundary coaches, cross-boundary goods vehicles, etc., with relevant quotas and licenses permits, were eligible to use the bridge. As announced earlier, the Hong Kong SAR government is pressing ahead with the quota-free scheme for Hong Kong private cars traveling to Guangdong via the bridge. That is the scheme. The Guangdong government and the Hong Kong SAR government announced on the 20th December 2022 that both governments were working on the detailed implementation arrangements of the scheme in accordance with the approval of the State Council, and would strive to announce detailed arrangements in the first quarter of 2023 and implement the scheme within the year, subject to factors such as the anti-pandemic requirements of Guangdong and Hong Kong. The implementation of the scheme will be a policy breakthrough, as currently a Guangdong-Hong Kong cross-boundary private car regular quota is generally required before a Hong Kong private car can travel between Hong Kong and Guangdong. The eligibility criteria for a regular quota are laid down by the Guangdong government, such as accumulating a certain amount of tax payments or donations. Under the scheme, a Hong Kong resident will be allowed to drive a private car owned by him or her between Hong Kong and Guangdong via the bridge without a quota. This will facilitate self-driving to Guangdong for business, visiting families, or sightseeing on a short-term basis by Hong Kong residents. Through further seizing the opportunities brought about by the bridge, the promotion of exchanges between Guangdong and Hong Kong can be enhanced. In consultation with the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau, my reply to the three parts of the question raised by Mr. Yin Gong is as follows. 1. The government announced on the 20th of December 2022 the basic arrangements for the scheme as finalized by the Guangdong government and the relevant mainland authorities. An applicant must be a Hong Kong resident who possesses a valid Hong Kong ID card and a valid mainland travel permit for Hong Kong and Macau residents, that is the home return permit. And he or she must also be the registered owner of the private car concerned. As for the eligibility for drivers, they must possess valid entry and exit documents, including a valid home return permit, a foreign passport with a valid visa endorsement, or a residence permit or a permanent residence card, or other international travel documents with a valid visa or endorsement, or a residence permit or a permanent residence card. As for those who do not possess the documents mentioned above and are not eligible as an applicant or a driver, they may travel between Hong Kong and Guangdong as a passenger on an eligible Hong Kong private car under the scheme, if they possess other valid entry and exit documents. It is also a consensus between the governments of Guangdong and Hong Kong that vehicles under this scheme must be private cars registered in the name of an individual, which aligns with the relevant requirements under the quota-free scheme for Macau private cars traveling to Guangdong via the bridge. After the scheme has been implemented for a certain period of time, the governments of Guangdong and Hong Kong will evaluate the application criteria as and when appropriate, as well as taking into account the relevant national policies with a view to continuing to refine the scheme. We will continue to discuss with our counterparts and strive for streamlining the application procedures and lowering the handling fees for the scheme as far as possible for the benefits and convenience of the public. For example, the State Council announced the customs guarantee-free policy for eligible Hong Kong private cars under the scheme in November 2022. The policy will allow Hong Kong private cars participating in the scheme to be exempted from paying customs duties or applying for guarantee arrangements with mainland customs, which will make the scheme much more attractive. 2. For the suggestion of introducing a monthly pass for using the bridge, while there are currently no such monthly passes being provided to bridge users. In light of the imminent implementation of the scheme, we have relayed to the Bridges Authority, which is responsible for determining the toll levels of the bridge, the suggestion on monthly payment of tolls by cross-boundary vehicles using the bridge for its consideration. For gold buses, which currently provide port shuttle bus services via the bridge, while no monthly pass schemes are offered to passengers, the Transport Department will actively liaise with the operator to explore the feasibility of introducing more concessionary arrangements to attract patronage and cater for the transport needs of different passengers. For example, half-fare concessions are being offered to children, people with disabilities, and the elderly who travel by gold buses. 3. According to the FSTB, Hong Kong private cars traveling to and from Guangdong via the bridge, including those that will participate in the scheme in the future, must comply with the statutory motor insurance requirements on third-party risks as required by the authorities of Hong Kong and the mainland. At present, owners of such Hong Kong private cars may take out statutory motor insurance policies of both Hong Kong and the mainland through Hong Kong insurers, providing relevant services under a one-stop arrangement. To further facilitate Hong Kong private cars traveling to and from Guangdong, we are preparing to implement the unilateral recognition policy, for cross-boundary motor insurance, so that the coverage of third-party insurance policies issued by Hong Kong insurers for Hong Kong private cars that enter Guangdong via the bridge may be extended to cover third-party liability on the mainland, sparing car owners from having to purchase separate policies for Hong Kong and the mainland. Currently, more than 10 Hong Kong insurers are ready to offer unilateral recognition motor insurance products once the scheme is launched by the governments of Hong Kong and Guangdong. Thank you, President. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, President. According to the Secretary for Transport and Logistics blog published on the 24th of December, the details of the scheme will be announced before March next year. Will the administration make reference to the implementation experience to extend the scheme to land crossing points between Hong Kong and Shenzhen? And does the government have any border control points in mind already? Thank you for your question. On my blog, I said that after the implementation of the scheme for a period of time, we will draw reference from the implementation of the scheme on the bridge and actively consider how we can extend the scheme to land crossing points between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, so that Hong Kong private cars can go to Guangdong and the western parts of Guangdong without a quota. Now, the scheme is yet to be implemented yet. We will have to take stock of our experience after implementing the scheme and consider how we can extend the scheme to border control points between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Thank you, President. Mr. Ronnie Chen. Thank you, President. Currently, private cars with a cross-boundary license must undergo regular inspection. Now, private cars under the scheme will travel to mainland on a very short-term basis. Do they still have to undergo inspection, vehicle inspection, before they become eligible? Secretary. Thank you. Participants under the scheme will need to have their private cars inspected. The same requirements applies to vehicles and private cars owners with a cross-boundary driving license and vehicle license. On application, an inspection would have to be arranged for the car. Thank you. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, President. After the resumption of cross-boundary travel, I believe many Hong Kong people will travel north via the bridge. As mentioned by the Secretary just now, in December, he said he expected the scheme's detail to be announced before March this year. He also mentioned the broad details of the broad contents of the scheme. He said it would not affect the regular quota for Hong Kong vehicles traveling north. So I wonder when the actual details will be announced and when it will be implemented, and whether the regular quota and eligibility for private cars traveling north will also be relaxed. Secretary, the member mentioned about the regular quotas and also the scheme. First of all, about the implementation of the scheme, as mentioned in my main reply, upon reaching a consensus with the mainland counterparts about the implementation details, we shall announce the details of the scheme in the first quarter of this year, as well as the timetable of implementation. Second, well, the idea of this scheme is that it is quota-free. Applicants don't have to fulfill those requirements under the regular quota arrangement. In terms of the duration of stay in the mainland, it will be different. For the regular quota arrangement and also the eligibility, we will discuss with our mainland counterparts whether the quota needs to be increased and also whether we have to adjust the eligibility for the participants. Well, that will go in parallel with the scheme. We will continue to liaise with the Guangdong provincial government on the arrangements of the regular quota. Mr. Ma Fengkuo. Thank you, President. At present, we have a lot of cross-boundary vehicles between the places. Over the past weekend, this is my experience. I had a quota, but I wasn't able to go to the mainland on my vehicle because I have switched to a new car over the past 3 years. Now, at the customs clearance points and the peripheral area, it was very crowded, and it was impossible to pass the control point. Now, I have been asking this question for a long time. Well, besides very old vehicles which are not safe anymore, well, actually, for inspection items, they are very similar on both sides. Can we aggressively streamline the inspection workflow and shorten the process to save time and money for drivers? It shouldn't be a very difficult task, but we haven't seen any progress over the years. Secretary. Thank you, President. On the issue of vehicle inspection, this is one of the requirements under the scheme. In terms of the inspection workflow, we have had a discussion with the Guangdong provincial government as well. We have just resumed cross-boundary travel. There are a lot of buses, private cars, shuttle buses, and so on, which need to undergo inspection before they can start commuting. So we have been talking with the mainland government about the requirements of inspection, and we have obtained their promises that they would strive to streamline the workflow. Well, like the member said, there are quite a number of overlapping inspection items, which are just very standard inspection procedures. So maybe we can establish a mutually recognized vehicle inspection regime. Still, there are differences in terms of safety requirements. Say, for example, emergency exits, the direction of the headlamps, and also the opacity of the car's windows. Well, we have to sort these all out with our mainland counterparts. We will continue with our work. Under the current regime, we are doing our best to offer facilitation measures for commercial vehicles and spare some commercial vehicles of the annual inspection needs, and also facilitate the custom clearance procedures. Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, President. I'm in full support of this scheme. It will facilitate drivers to travel through the bridge to the mainland for work and for traveling on a self-drive basis. But on behalf of the industry, I would ask the governments to pay attention to the risk that unlicensed vehicles for hire would eat into the business of our industry. For these unlicensed vehicles for hire, their third-party insurance is not valid, and it would be very dangerous. Secretary, or for drivers who offer illegal hiring service under the scheme, well, it would be essentially the same as offering driving services illegally, and we will crack down on these practices ruthlessly. In terms of the scheme, prior application would be required. If it is found that private cars or participants under the scheme are engaging in illegal behaviors or activities, then we would definitely take legal actions. And there will also be administrative actions to punish these drivers. We will revoke their registration. So besides criminal liability, there will also be administrative consequences. Thank you. Ms. Maggie Chen. My apologies. What question has not been answered? I ask how the government can prevent that. Or if there are precautionary measures, then we won't see any of these practices as the BCPs. I'm just asking how the government will prevent this from happening. Secretary. Thank you, President. In terms of law enforcement, the police will take forward targeted enforcement actions. Say, for example, intelligence collection and also sting operations. We will also take forward follow-up actions for cases referred to us. In terms of publication and publicity and education, we will educate the public on how they can identify cars for illegal hiring. And we will remind citizens that these vehicles will not be covered by third-party insurance. Thank you.
Second question, Mr. Louis Long. President, if I may take off my face mask while I'm speaking, I hope that I can get my message across there much clearer. President, there are views that while the CE has stated clearly in his first policy address that solving the housing problem tops the agenda of the current term government, the demand-side management measures for the property market, aka harsh measures, are not mentioned at all. In addition, the government of the previous terms had all indicated that the policy objective of these measures was to curb external investment and speculative demands under the exceptional circumstances of low interest rate, abundant liquidity, and serious demand-side imbalance, so as to ensure the healthy and stable development of the market, and accord priority to home ownership needs of Hong Kong permanent residents. However, the recent global and local economic conditions are entirely different from when the measures were introduced, and the supply of land and housing has also been increasing. In this connection, the government informed this Council 1 whether the authorities have, in the light of global and local economic situations in recent years, reviewed the policy objective, the effectiveness and the need for the continuation of such measures. If so, of the details. If not, why not? 2, given that some members of the public who plan to purchase homes have pointed out that instead of being a stepping stone, these measures have in fact become a stumbling block to home ownership amid the current economic environment, whether the authorities will relax or even remove such measures so as to effectively assist Hong Kong permanent residents in purchasing their own homes. And 3, as the buyer stamp duty, BSD, has substantially increased the cost of developers' acquisition of flats and old buildings, and a huge amount of capital can only be recovered upon demolition, whether the authorities will adjust the arrangement of refund after collection or even abolish BSD in this respect so as to expedite urban renewal and increase housing supply. Secretary for Housing. President, maintaining healthy and steady development of the private residential market is one of the most important objectives of our housing policies. The government has all along adopted a two-pronged approach by increasing land and housing supply to meet demand and introducing demand-side management measures to combat short-term speculative activities, curb external demand, and reduce investment demand. My consolidated reply to Mr. Long's question is as follows. The prevailing demand-side management measures for residential properties, including special stamp duty, SSD, buyer stamp duty, BSD, and new residential stamp duty, NRSD, have been effective since introduction. The number of short-term resale transactions, including confirmed more transactions and resale within 24 months, accounted for 0.9% of the total transactions from January to November 2022, which is substantially lower than the 20% before the introduction of SSD. During the same period, the number of residential property transactions involving non-local individuals and non-local companies stayed low at 0.5%, which was much lower than the 4.5% before the introduction of BSD, i.e. from January to October 2012. Meanwhile, among residential property transactions where buyers are Hong Kong permanent residents, about 97% of the cases involved buyers who did not own any other residential property in Hong Kong, which was significantly higher than the 75% before the introduction of NRSD, i.e. from January to November 2016. These figures illustrate that the demand-side management measures have been effective in reducing short-term speculative activities as well as external and investment demands, and have served the objective of stabilizing the residential property market, which is crucial to the sustainable development of Hong Kong, while according priority to the home ownership needs amidst the prevailing tight housing supply situation. The government has been closely monitoring the private residential market development and would take into account a number of factors, including the pace and magnitude of price changes, transaction volume of residential properties, future supply, economic situations, and outlook, as well as market sentiment. The overall private residential price index in November 2022 remained at a high level despite its retreat in comparison with that at the beginning of 2022. The mortgage-to-income ratio, i.e. the home purchase affordability ratio, remained at an elevated level of 73% in the third quarter of 2022, which is significantly above the long-term average of 49% over the 20-year period from 2002 to 2021, indicating that the overall residential property prices are still at a level beyond general public affordability. In terms of private residential property transactions, the number of monthly average transactions from January 2021 to November 2022 was around 5,100, which was similar to the number of around 5,300 in the 10 years following the introduction of the measures from December 2010 to December 2020. On the supply side, based on the latest estimates, as at end of September 2022, the projected supply of first-hand private residential units in the coming 3 to 4 years stayed at a high level of around 95,000 units, reflecting a stable supply of private residential units. Taking into account the above factors, we consider the current development of the local property market is an orderly adjustment, and we do not see the need to adjust the relevant demand-side management measures at the moment. If the measures are abolished hastily without suitable conditions, such move would be subject to market speculation and may stimulate demand for and even short-term speculation of local residential properties. With regard to the stamp duty concerning redevelopment projects, currently a developer may apply for a refund of BSD and a partial refund of the ad valorem stamp duty paid after the developer has become the owner of the entire lot to be redeveloped and has met one of the following conditions. A, having obtained the consent to commence any foundation work for the lot from the building authority under the buildings ordinance, or B, having demolished or caused to be demolished all buildings existing on the lot and obtain BA's approval in respect of the plans and details of the building works on the lot. This refund mechanism is on the basis of the amount being the difference between the stamp duties computed at the NRSD rate and the Scale 2 rate. This refund mechanism encourages developers to take forward and implement redevelopment projects as soon as possible. We have no intention to adjust the mechanism. The government will monitor closely the market situation and take appropriate action when necessary. Mr. Louis Long. President, before I put my supplementary question, I'd like to refer the Secretary to the Economic Channel. The cooling measures are not the measure to tame the market at the right moment. In terms of the transaction, by comparison with the 10-year after the introduction, the transaction volume is actually similar. In 2022, the transaction volume for the first-hand and second-hand market has dropped by a drastic 40% compared with the previous year, the lowest since 1997. All these cooling measures make it difficult for people to not be able to afford the down payment, despite the fact that they can afford the mortgage repayment if the government doesn't relax or remove the cooling measures. What measures does the government have to help those who can afford the mortgage payment but cannot afford the deposit to get on the housing ladder? Secretary, thanks very much, Mr. Long. We noticed that the transaction volume this year has dropped, but we must be aware that there are headwinds, there are negative factors. We all understand that the global economic situation is unfavorable. We've seen interest rate hikes, and these might continue into the future. But there are also positive factors with the reopening of the boundary, with the economic situation coming back alive. The combination of these factors would certainly generate positive results. If we hastily remove these demand-side management measures or the cooling measures, as they are referred to out there, I think we have to tread carefully. We are looking at an orderly adjustment. We cannot see any drastic slide in the property prices. We do have enough land for the coming 10 years for public housing and also private housing. There will be sufficient supply going forward. As the supply becomes more abundant, people are going to have a healthy situation where they can get on the housing ladder. Question and answered. But have you heard my question? My question is, what specific measures does the government have to help those who can afford the mortgage repayment but cannot afford the down payment to get on the housing ladder. Secretary. Now, these demand-side management measures are precisely intended to guard against any speculative activities. We are allowing people who want to get on the housing ladder to be able to do so. Now, the SSD has been very effective. 97% of the people who acquired property were not property owners themselves in the past year. It is because of these measures that we are able to accord opportunities for people to get on the housing ladder. Mr. Andrew Lam. To tackle speculation by introducing these measures is good in its intention, but we are competing for talents. We're competing for enterprises. I mean, will these cooling measures have any negative effect? My question is, with regard to the housing policies, will the government make or conduct a review in the light of the competition for talents and enterprises and make adjustment accordingly? Secretary. Thank you, President. Thanks very much, Mr. Lam. In terms of enticing talents to Hong Kong, in the policy address, we propose that for the talents who come and work in Hong Kong, once they have stayed for 7 years and become permanent residents, they will enjoy the privilege of having the stamp duty refunded. The bill will be introduced to the floor of the Council in Q1 this year. By the time the scheme is up and running, we will be scrutinizing the effectiveness. We have 110,000 people who come to Hong Kong under the talent scheme. How many of them are going to be acquiring property in Hong Kong? It would be hard to assess for the time being. I think we have to collect more data once the scheme is up and running. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang. The starter home scheme, the duty has come into effect in 2022. For $2 billion worth of property, there will be $100 volume duty. It has been going on for 16 years. According to the property index for the second-hand property market, the prices have gone up by doubled compared with 2021 and also 2020. Now, for Type A property, 400 square meters or below, this is similar in terms of magnitude. So for the property worth $2 billion, it is really impossible to get. So the entry-level property would be worth $5 million at the minimum. So this volume duty would be $100,000 to $200,000. It is as much as one would pay for the fitting out cost. So I think the government's policy has to evolve with the time. Will the government be adjusting this policy and increase the $2 million threshold to $5 million threshold? Secretary. Thanks very much for the suggestion. We don't have any intention to make these adjustments for the time being, but we'll certainly take back this suggestion and see whether it is worth pursuing. Mr. Kenneth Lau. President. For property worth $10 million or below, people can apply for 70% of the mortgage, and this is what we call the breathing plan. Now, given the interest rate hike, many people are becoming people of negative equity. Now, there has been an increase of 533 cases of negative equity, a drastic rise in recent years. We are concerned about it. We're going to be repeating the bubble situation back in 1997. What measures does the government have up its sleeve to guard against the possibility of a bubble burst and also a massive surge in negative equities, thus jeopardizing the economic situation? Secretary. Now, people call these plans as breathing plans, meaning that it's very easy to take out a loan. I think people will have to be very careful of the fine print, and I think we have to look at these in sufficient detail. As to negative equity, we've seen that in 2022 Q2, the number stood at 50 or so. In Q3, and the number shot up to 500 or so. But by comparison with earlier years, like in 2008 with the financial crisis, we had more than 10,000. In 2003, during SARS epidemic, 100,000. Now, given this situation, the negative equity of 500 or so cases doesn't show any sign of a rapid surge. When people take out a mortgage, the banks would be very careful. In 2008, we have revamped the system. For property worth below 10 billion, it is 60%. More than 10 billion, it is 50% in terms of mortgage. And there is a very stringent stress test, which will embed the affordability in the light of the interest rate hike. And the mortgage lending would take into account all these factors. So the whole situation is robust and healthy. Mr. Chairman Kwong, President, from the reply, the administration is merely concerned about the speculative activities. But in March 2021, following the cooling measures, we haven't seen any speculative activities. So for residential properties, will the administration be rolling back the cooling measures, in particular those young people who don't own any property? Shouldn't there be any exemption from the stamp duty in order to cater for the young people's desire to acquire properties? Secretary. Well, like the member said, these measures are indeed able to curb the speculative activities. The statistics that I cited show that all these measures prove to be effective. As to youth acquisition of property, we're also just as concerned. We have the starter home scheme. 85% of the people are actually below the age of 40. Even for HOS, 75% are aged below 40. And we are increasing the land and housing supply, and we are opening up more opportunities like starter home scheme, HOS, and all these would certainly be helpful to the young people who intend to get on the housing ladder. As to whether there should be stamp duty rebate, I think we have to tread carefully with any measures. Are we getting across a message to encourage people to acquire property? As I said, we do have the headwinds, we do have the tailwinds in the market. We don't have intention to do anything suggested.
Question 3, Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, President. The government has resumed the collection of levy under the supplemental labor scheme since 2013, whereby employers who are granted approval for importing workers are required to pay a levy of $400 each month in respect of each imported worker. And the levy is for the Employees Retraining Board to augment the provision of training and retraining for local workers. However, quite a number of employers in the agricultural and fisheries industry including chicken farms, fish rafts, fish ponds, and pig farms, who have imported workers have relayed that although the collection of the levy has been resumed for nearly 10 years, the authorities have not yet been able to train up suitable local manpower for them. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the amount of the levy collected by the government from employees in the agriculture and fisheries industry, and the percentage of such amount in the total amount of levy collected, as well as the number of imported workers in the agricultural and fisheries industry, and the percentage of such number in the total number of imported workers in each of the past 5 years, how the authorities used the levy collected to train up local agriculture and fisheries workers, and the number of such workers successfully trained up. Second, given that the authorities have for years failed to assist employees in the agriculture and fisheries industry in training up suitable local workers, of the government's justifications for continuing to collect the levy from employers in the agriculture and fisheries industry, whether it will consider adjusting the policy, including lowering the levy or adjusting the levy on the basis of a percentage of a worker's salary so as to avoid aggravating the already heavy financial burden on the business of employers in the agriculture and fisheries industry. And third, as some employees in the agriculture and fisheries industry and in other industries have relayed that the government took a long time in the past to process applications for importation of workers, and that it has taken even as long as 1 year since the outbreak of the COVID-19 epidemic for such applications to be approved, making the employers easily become vulnerable to a worker vacuum period of the longest and shortest time required in the past 3 years for employers submitting applications for importation of workers to employers being granted approvals, whether the government will improve the relevant application process. Thank you. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, in tandem with the social and economic development of Hong Kong, the government is committed to nurturing local talents of different sectors and enhancing the employability and competitiveness of employees. On the premise of safeguarding the employment priority for local workers, the government allows importation of workers so as to alleviate the shortage of manpower in individual sectors and job categories. As regards the question raised by the member, my reply is as follows. First, it is the government's established policy that employers approved of importing low-skilled workers should contribute towards the fees for training and retraining of the local workforce. In line with this policy, all employers of workers imported under the labor importation schemes designated under the Employees Retraining Ordinance, Cap 423, have been required to pay the Employees Retraining Levy since the commencement of the ordinance in 1992. The levy is transferred to the Employees Retraining Fund administered by the Employees Retraining Board for providing training and retraining to local workers. Since 1996, employers have been allowed to apply for importation of workers at technician level or below under the Supplementary Labor Scheme, the SLS. The SLS is a labor importation scheme designated under the ordinance. In accordance with the ordinance, employers are required to pay the levy amounted to $400 per imported worker per month. The total amount payable by employers is $400 multiplied by the number of months covered by each employment contract up to a maximum of 24 months. According to the statistics provided by the Immigration Department, the amount of the levy collected for the importation of workers in the agriculture and fisheries industry in the past 5 years has been largely stable, with an average of about 6.5 million per year, accounting for about 20% of the total annual amount of the levy. Detailed figures are at Annex 1. ERB has been providing training courses that are market-driven and employment-oriented. In the past 5 years, ERB has not received suggestions to provide courses related to the agriculture and fisheries industry, and no trainees have enrolled in relevant courses. Employers that offer 12 or more vacancies in a particular position which requires special skill sets can apply for ERB's tailor-made program. ERB will provide free recruitment, pre-employment training, and placement follow-up services to relevant employers. As regards SLS, the numbers of imported workers approved for the agriculture and fisheries industry each year during the past 5 years range from 705 to 912, accounting for 15.6% to 25% of the total number of imported workers approved in respective years. Detailed figures can be found at Annex 2. Under SLS, employers of imported workers in any industry should pay the levy in accordance with the law. The arrangement of the levy meets the policy objective of assisting the retraining of local workers. The government currently has no plan to lower the levy, or adjust the mode of the levy for employers of particular industries. Third, the time required by the Labor Department for processing each SLS application is affected by various factors. They include whether the applicant employer has provided sufficient information or requested to change the application details during processing, whether special trade tests need to be administered for local job seekers during the 4-week open recruitment period, etc. If the job vacancies involve novel job titles or special skills, LD will need more time to seek advice from relevant bureaus and/or departments, training bodies, professional bodies, etc. for setting the reasonable wages, entry requirements, scope of duties. In recent years, the processing of most SLS applications has taken about 5 months. LD from time to time reviews the implementation of SLS and adopts feasible measures with a view to enhancing the workflow of processing applications. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, President. First of all, I'd like to thank the Labor and Welfare Bureau for helping speed up certain applications, but then the application process is still very long. That is why I asked the third part of the question, because we need to streamline the entire application process. In the reply, we see that labor and levy for Agriculture and Fisheries Department actually take up about 1/5 of all levies. So you can see that it's like another punch in our industry. It is really unfair. In the reply, the government said that there are no plans to lower the levy or adjust the mode of the levy of particular industries. By saying that you have no plans to lower the levy, it appears that the government does not care about these unfair treatments. I'm not saying that we do not have responsibility to train people in the industries, but then for an imported worker, you only get around $400 per month for the levy. Do you think that it's fair and that there is no need to review agriculture and fisheries industry or for these lower skill industry? Do you think that this is unfair to such industries? Secretary, President, we do need to charge a fixed levy per imported worker. We are not targeting the affordability of any employer or industry. Our general principle is that local workers come first. However, for certain industries, there is a need to import workers to alleviate the shortage of labor. We're talking only about $400 as the levy to help train and retrain workers in need. So this is a sort of financial subsidy. We are not looking at particular industries. We are looking at the overall picture, the overall local industry. Mr. Chiu Ka-fai. Thank you, President. I'd like to thank Mr. Stephen Ho for posing this question. We should not only talk about agriculture and fisheries industry. There is a shortage of labor in all industries in Hong Kong. Under these difficult times, you see that about 20% of the shops in Tsim Sha Tsui are actually closed, but the unemployment rate is only 3.75%. The borders are reopening. More people are now coming into Hong Kong, but we still see a shortage of labor. So how are we going to find our labor supply? Well, I hear that you have actually learned from the experience in Singapore. So what measures can you adopt to help us to import more workers into Hong Kong? Secretary. For laborers of technician level or below, we have been adopting the supplementary labor scheme, the SLS, for a period of time. In the policy address in October last year, other than the SLS, the chief executive has also talked about the shortage of local labor and that a consideration of importing workers will be done when there is a huge shortage, such as in the shortage of labor in residential care homes. So there's a quota of about 7,000. And we can actually streamline the process for 7,000 and under. So this is a method we have adopted to try to meet the demand in the market and at the same time to try to let local workers find employment first. Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, President. I'd like to thank Stephen Ho for asking this question. We at the DAP has also requested the review of the SLS to meet the shortage of labor in certain industries. However, it is also equally important to train new blood locally. So it seems that there have not been suggestions to provide courses related to the agriculture and fisheries industry, and no trainees have enrolled in relevant courses. It seems that you're not doing enough for those who are looking into entering the agriculture and fisheries industry. In recent years, I have heard that only family members of those in this industry have entered the industry. And so we really need to do something to help us attract new blood. How can you help us to meet these challenges? Secretary. President, the government hopes to adopt different measures to attract people into various industries. The ERB is one channel. We are willing to provide resources to help train up people. I've already discussed this with Stephen Ho. I understand that the industries face many challenges. I will continue my discussion with him to try to attract local people into the agriculture and fisheries industry. Actually, the pay is not low. However, newcomers must, of course, have a change in mindset and work hard and I hope that we'll be able to attract more people into this industry. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you, President. We've heard the reply from the Secretary, and that actually the agriculture and fisheries industry have account for 1/5 of all the total levies. But then no courses have been open in relation to this industry because there have not been any suggestions to provide such courses. Why does the government not take the initiative and to talk to the industry to find ways to attract people to take such courses and then to work in this particular industry? You must not continue with such passive attitude. Secretary. President, thank you for your suggestion. Well, the agriculture and fisheries industry taking up 20% of the levy shows that we do see a huge number of imported workers in this industry. I'm happy to hear your suggestion. And so in my discussion with Stephen Ho, we will try to come up with more ways to attract people in the industry, and we'll try our best to use our resources wisely to open up more courses in this sector. Mr. Kwok Wai Kung. Thank you. Well, the government has received the levy. How come there are no courses provided to this industry? We can actually look at this from another perspective. Well, the government has the resources. You already charged the levy. However, you have not provided training for local workers. You were just sitting there doing nothing. Without making changes to this, we're worried that we will need to import workers in many industries. And once you start doing that, there is no going back. You would see a shortage of job opportunities for local workers as well. How can we rejuvenate the economy and then have the public also reap the benefits of a rising economy? How can we actually improve the situation? Secretary. President, the ERB provides training courses that are market-driven and is based on the current needs. As you understand, many young people are not willing to enter industries that need hard labor. We will try our best to provide courses with our resources at the ERB, but this is not something that we can only do on the side of the ERB. Actually, those working in the agriculture and fisheries industry can make quite a good living. But then how do we attract young people to join the industry and not think of it as a low-level job? We really must work together to try to repackage the image of the agriculture and fisheries industry. Mr. Stephen Ho, well, I should say that the Secretary has not answered my question. Well, although this question is related to the agriculture and fisheries sector, I'm also using this opportunity to show the unfairness in the system, and that everyone also needs to take up the responsibility to train up workers in Hong Kong. But at this responsibility, you see that we at the agriculture and fisheries industry is paying 1/5 of all total levy, and yet we are not receiving any courses. That's why I'm asking you, for those in earning 50,000 or 100,000, can actually they also pay up something to help train local workers? We also have to pay this to local domestic helpers. Well, that took up about 1/10 of the salary, and then for our industry, you might need to pay about 16,000 or 20,000 for more professionals in this sector. I'm not talking about salary right now. I'm just talking about the unfairness of the situation. ERB has been providing training courses for those in construction and renovation. Yet we paid the levy and we're not receiving any training or any courses. So you have to answer me directly and not say that you're just going to liaise with me further to see how we can improve the situation. Other low-level technician-level jobs also are receiving such unfair treatment, such as those working in RCHs. Well, you have already asked your question. Secretary. Well, the government provides resources to the ERB, but actually the total levy received is not a high amount. The majority of the courses are paid by the government. The levy only accounts for a very small percentage. Well, let's say $6.5 million and 1/5 from the agriculture and fisheries industry. We're only talking about 30 million of levies per year. So it's only a very, very small amount. We, however, need to look at the principle. We want to hire local workers first. When workers have been imported, then a levy should be paid so that when we train up local workers, they are also helping with the provision of workers. Well, Stephen Ho keeps on talking about 1/5 being paid by the agriculture and fisheries industry. In the past, under SLS, the largest number of imported workers work in residential care homes. The ERB expenses are actually paid mostly by the government. The levy only amounts to a very small figure. But since employers are hiring imported workers, then we do think that there is a responsibility on the side of the employer to pay a levy, to make a small contribution to the sector.
Question 4, Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, President. It is learned that there are nearly 400,000 Hong Kong residents on the mainland who are mainly in places such as the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, the Greater Bay Area, GBA, Beijing, and Shanghai. But it has all along been difficult for them to vote in Hong Kong elections. It was until the 2021 Legislative Council general election that the government, for the first time, made an arrangement to enable Hong Kong electors who were on the mainland to vote at polling stations set up at Hung Yuen Wai, Lo Wu, and Lok Ma Chau Spur Line boundary control points. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it has collected data on the aforesaid arrangement, including the number of people who voted, polling station preferences, peak voting periods, and reasons for electors not being able to go and cast their votes, as well as conducted analysis and studies? If so, of the details and outcome, if not, the reasons for that. 2, whether it has plans to regularize the aforesaid voting arrangement. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. And 3, whether it has studied if setting up polling stations at more control points and in mainland cities will be subject to restrictions under the Basic Law or relevant ordinances. What are the technical considerations involved? Whether it has discussed with mainland authorities of the setting up of polling stations in mainland cities of the GBA and other mainland cities to facilitate Hong Kong electors to cast their votes. If it has, of the details, if not, reasons for that. Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. President, the 2021 LegCo election, the Legislative Council general election, was held on the 19th of December 2021. It is the second major and by far the largest election after the full implementation of the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong under the improved electoral system. The Hong Kong SAR government attached great importance to every electoral arrangement of the 2021 LegCo election with a view to ensuring that the election was conducted in a fair, just, honest, efficient, and user-friendly manner. The successful conduct of the election by the Hong Kong SAR government is of great significance. In previous elections, some registered electors who were in the mainland would return to Hong Kong on the polling day to cast their vote. Since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, some people were unable to return to Hong Kong in time due to quarantine and isolation measures. In light of such situation, and to facilitate geographical constituencies electors and functional constituency electors who are on the mainland and wish to return to vote in the LegCo election, the Hong Kong SAR government enlisted necessary assistance and support from the relevant mainland authorities and was grateful for the full cooperation rendered to set up temporary polling stations at 3 designated Hong Kong-Shenzhen boundary control points on the Hong Kong side. The Hong Kong SAR government made a special one-off arrangement for electors to return from the mainland to Hong Kong to vote, special arrangement for short. It set up 3 polling stations at boundary control points BCPs at Hung Yuen Wai, Lo Wu, and Lok Ma Chau Spur Line. An elector who had pre-registered and fulfilled certain criteria could be exempted from quarantine in order to vote at these designated BCP polling station in Hong Kong before returning directly to the mainland. In response to Mr. Look's question, our reply is as follows. 1. To ensure the special arrangement of the 2021 electoral election could be carried out in an orderly manner and to control the pandemic risks effectively, all electors returning to Hong Kong from the mainland to vote must pre-register from the 1st to the 8th of December 2021. There was a quota for the arrangement. The total pre-registration quota for the 3 BCP polling stations was 111,000. Hang Yun Wai, Liantang 33,000, Lo Wu 42,000, and Lok Ma Chau Spur Line Futian 36,000. The quota was allocated on a first-come, first-served basis. The number of successfully registered quota was 21,948 Hang Yun Wai, 6,115 Lo Wu, 7,012, and Lok Ma Chau Spur Line to 8,821. An elector was required to choose a BCP polling station, that is, anyone from the 3 designated polling stations where they would like to vote during the pre-registration. Once confirmed, the elector would be allocated to vote at the chosen polling station on the polling day. The polling hours of these stations were the same as the ordinary polling stations, that is 8:30 in the morning to 10:30 in the evening. An elector had to choose a specified time slot. Each hour was counted as one slot on the polling day for voting, so as to facilitate corresponding arrangement and crowd management. The Registration and Electoral Office, REO, has arranged sufficient manpower at each BCP polling station and made full use of the space at these BCPs as operation was suspended at the time, so as to ensure the smooth arrangement and operation of BCP polling stations. The pre-registered and actual number of voters at each BCP polling station is set out at Annex 1. The actual number of voters per hour at the 3 BCP polling stations is at Annex 2. Under the principle of vote secrecy, the REO will not examine and check the information and reasons of pre-registered electors who did not vote at these polling stations. The said special arrangement was a one-off measure, which was the result of consultation and agreement between the Hong Kong SAR government and relevant mainland authorities. As pointed out by the Electoral Affairs Commission in its report on the 2021 electoral election, whether or not the special arrangement is applicable to future public elections shall depend on the actual circumstances. It is not a general arrangement. The Hong Kong SAR government will consider the applicability of such arrangements to future elections having regard to actual circumstances, such as the necessity for polling stations at BCPs, space available at individual BCPs, crowd control, security considerations, cooperation with the mainland, etc. Prevailing electoral legislation is only applicable to elections held in Hong Kong, and such legislation does not cover election-related work and procedures. For example, setting up polling stations, regulating election-related conduct outside Hong Kong. At the time, the 3 BCP polling stations were all located on the Hong Kong side and therefore did not involve the question of extraterritorial voting. As regards the suggestion of setting up polling stations on the mainland, it involves complex legal and actual operational issues. The Hong Kong SAR government needs to consider various factors, including whether there is a need and how to make pre-registration arrangements for voting outside Hong Kong, how to effectively and safely transport ballot papers and ballot boxes to and from polling stations outside Hong Kong, arrangements during the polling count, how to apply relevant electoral election and regulations of Hong Kong when arranging polling count outside Hong Kong, risks involved in the process and how to handle unexpected situations, how to effectively maintain order, how to enforce relevant electoral election, how to devise an appropriate monitoring mechanism to ensure that the credibility of the election will not be undermined as a result, etc. Before making a decision, the Hong Kong SAR government has to deliberate in great detail from the policy and legal operation perspectives, and there should be thorough discussion in society. As these issues would take time to deliberate, the Hong Kong SAR government has no plan to set up polling stations on the mainland for the time being. Mr. Lok, thank you, President. Thank you Secretary for his reply. I understand that the government has done a lot to enable Hong Kong residents who are on the mainland to vote. But these Hong Kongers have also done a lot too. Say, for example, we've done a lot of work to enable Hong Kong residents to register as voters so that they can participate in elections. As pointed in the Secretary's reply, that there are a number of factors involved in the setting up of polling stations on the mainland. I hope they will continue discussion with mainland authorities. In paragraph 2 of the main reply, it says that in relation to the applicability of these arrangements in the future, it depends on the actual situation. We have vacancies in LegCo. We can see that there will be by-elections. So I would like to ask, what is the progress of negotiation with the mainland in relation to special arrangements? Secretary. We take into account special circumstances of a particular case before we decide whether to set up BCP polling stations. We'll make a decision after having considered the circumstances and the situation. So far, we have not started negotiations with the mainland in relation to the arrangement. If necessary, we will do so. Mr. Tik Chi-yun. Thank you, President. Information shows that there are about hundreds of thousands of voters, Hong Kong voters on the mainland. So we're talking about a considerable number. Their vote will affect the election because they are voters. And they're not just voters, they can stand in elections as well. And if that is the case, they need to forward information to their voters. For certain prospective candidates or parties, it's not easy for them to reach out to Hong Kong voters. So how do you make sure that there is a fair and just election? In relation to voters on the mainland, well, for information of candidates, we make use of a dedicated website to disseminate the information. So voters on the mainland will be able to access the information via the website. And if they want to access such information at polling stations, we, via mainland offices, contact residents on the mainland. And these channels include chambers of commerce, social media. We disseminate information of electoral arrangements at these BCP polling stations. Ms. Carmen Kan, from the Secretary's reply, we understand that, yes, it is a special arrangement because at that time, an exemption is required for people to vote because they have to be exempted from quarantine and isolation requirements, and there was abundance negotiation undertaken. We understand that it was a special circumstance and there were restrictions, and these polling stations were situated at border control points. The Secretary talked about complexity of the issue as well as legal issues. Would you consider the feasibility of electronic voting? Secretary. Thank you. I thank Ms. Kan for her question. Regarding electronic voting, currently, as I said, Hong Kong is a smart city. We do hope that we have e-service. In terms of voting, of course, we want to introduce e-voting. But for certain segments, say for example, counting as well as this distribution of ballot papers, we have used electronic ways. E-voting is a direction that we will consider. We already have mature technology. So technicality is not a major issue. What we need to consider is how is to make sure that it will not undermine credibility and authority of elections, and we have to conduct in-depth study into it. We may consider engaging consultants to look into the issue. Thank you. Mr. Shanghai Long, as the Secretary just pointed out, that they may consider e-voting. Well, the I Am Smart system has been in place for a long time. You can sign things, you can ask for digital authorization or authentication for over 200 initiatives. And many things, say for example, opening of accounts can be done via I Am Smart. But I understand that the arrangement is different in different departments or bureaus. Some use it more than others. Unfortunately, the CMAB offers no such e-service. There are a lot of mainland offices under the bureau. So it will be the easiest for them to reach out to the 400,000 voters on the mainland. Do they have a plan to make use of I Am Smart on the mainland in 2023? Mr. Shang, you are only allowed one question. Please sit down. Secretary. In terms of voter registration, we have plans to make it electronic. Members of the public may submit their voter registration form via I Am Smart. In relation to having electronic mode in all different segments, we have to tread very carefully. Regarding other e-services or I Am Smart, as I said, that we would consider electronic approach in different segments, but we have to consider relevant factors as well. Mr. Chen Yong, thank you. And I also thank the Secretary. There was a one-off special arrangement to allow Hong Kong voters on the mainland to vote. It was successful, and it is a very good mechanism. I hope it will continue. A lot of Hong Kong people choose to pursue their career in GBA, especially now that the borders open. In relation to their permanent address in Hong Kong, I would like to ask whether the Bureau will review the situation. We want that to be a restriction that takes away the right to vote on the part of voters on the mainland. Secretary, thank you. In relation to ordinarily resident requirement, it is under Section 28 of the LegCo Ordinance, Legislative Council Ordinance. The requirement is ordinarily resident in Hong Kong. The objective is to ensure that candidates elected will be ordinarily resident in Hong Kong who would represent Hong Kong people's interest. Usually the requirement is that there is the main and sole resident in Hong Kong. If someone is absent from Hong Kong for a period of time, as long as they can provide the information on main and sole residents in Hong Kong, that's fine. It doesn't have to be confined to your own property. If you stay at your relatives in Hong Kong, that would be acceptable. As long as the address is mail sent to the address can reach you, that's fine. Hong Kong people who live on the mainland, as long as they can find this address to provide, that would be in order. And it's not easy. And I believe that these people treat Hong Kong as their home, even though they are not staying in Hong Kong for the time being. So far, we don't have any plans to change this policy and legislative requirement. Our purpose is to ensure that legislators' return will represent the interest of Hong Kong people. Mr. Dominic Lee. Mr. Kisson Ng. Mr. Johnny Ng. Would you consider setting up polling stations at mainland offices? Or would you consider allowing voting by mail? Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Ng for his question. As I said, setting up polling stations on the mainland involves complex legislative and legal operational issues. We have to give it full consideration. In relation to voting by mail, again, it involves a lot of uncertainties. Say, for example, whether the voter is under the influence of others, whether the ballot paper mail will be lost in the process. We have considered similar arrangements in other places. We realize that it draws a lot of controversies. So far we have not given it thoughts in detail. If need be, of course, we will give it further consideration, but we have no such plans at the moment. Mr. Lam Chun Sing, thank you. Of course, I hope that the government will continue to look into arrangements to allow Hong Kong voters on the mainland to vote. Before that happens, can the special arrangement of voting at BCP polling stations be extended? Say, for example, polling hours starting at 7 o'clock? Or allowing voting at BCP polling stations at the weekends so that people who live far away can travel to cast their vote. This gives more flexibility to voters. Secretary, as I've said, there are many things to be considered in relation to voting on the mainland. In relation to BCP polling stations, we have to take into the actual situation when there is a need. Regarding polling hours, there are many different views. Some ask for longer hours, whereas others ask for shorter hours. We will make appropriate arrangements. On one hand, we would like to ensure that there is sufficient time for voters to vote. But if polling hours are too long, it will be an undue burden on candidates and voters.
Question 5. The Honourable Duncan Chiu. Thank you. My question relates to the Leave Home Safe app. In the light of the development of COVID-19 epidemic, the government has announced that with effect from the 14th of December last year, the lifting of the requirement for members of the public to scan the Leave Home Safe venue QR code when entering premises, and that premises operators are no longer required to display LHS venue QR codes. In this connection, will the government inform this Council 1, given that the government has reiterated for many times that the main functions of the LHS mobile app are to help members of the public identify high-risk activities and facilitate contact tracing, whether the government will provide relevant data, including the number of downloads by members of the public, the number of times of which high-risk activities were identified, and the number of cases in which contact tracing was facilitated, etc., so as to demonstrate the actual benefits of the mobile app from its launch in November 2020 to 13th of December 2022, and whether the government has comprehensively reviewed if the mobile app can achieve the target benefits originally expected by the government. 2. Of the amount of information and data assessed and used through the LHS mobile app so far, and the mechanism for subsequent processing of such information data. And 3. Of the future arrangements for the LHS mobile app, including whether it will be permanently removed or merged with other government applications such as I Am Smart, and the details of the relevant arrangements, such as the estimated manpower to be involved in operation and system maintenance, the handling of information data already used, the estimated operating expenditure, the function changes, and the implementation timetable. Thank you. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, the government adopts a multi-pronged approach and in implementing an adjustment of anti-epidemic policies and measures, having regard to the latest development of the COVID-19 epidemic. It has also proactively uses different innovative technology solutions to make these effects more effective. My consolidated reply to the questions raised by Mr. Duncan Chu is as follows. The government launched a Reform Safe mobile app in November 2022 to provide members of the public with a convenient digital tool for recording the time of their visits to different venues during the epidemic. The mobile app will also send exposure notifications to users who have visited a venue where a confirmed patient has also visited at about the same time and remind users to undergo testing in accordance with the requirements stipulated in the compulsory testing notices. In the unfortunate event of being contracted, the user's visit records stored in the app can assist the Center for Health Protection to conduct epidemiological investigations and contact tracing. It can help cut the transmission chains in the community. The design of the Reform Safe mobile app follows the principle of privacy protection. Users can use the app readily without the need to register any personal information. Users' visit records and their vaccine pass are encrypted and stored in the mobile phone of the mobile phones will not be stored in any government or other systems. Visit records stored in users' mobile app will be erased automatically after 31 days. For confirmed patients, in accordance with CAP 599D, Prevention and Control of Disease Disclosure of Information Regulation, they have a duty to submit their visit records to the Center for Health Protection for the purpose of epidemiological investigations. The visit records will be treated as the records for epidemiological investigations and the retention arrangement of such is the same as the records used in other epidemiological investigations conducted by the Department of Health. Taking into account the views of the public and the industry, as well as the latest development of the anti-epidemic policies in Hong Kong, we've been continuously enhancing the Reform Safe mobile app. Over the past 2 years or so, we've rolled out over 40 versions to tie in with the government's anti-epidemic measures prevailing at different stages. Last year, to tie in with the vaccine pass arrangement implemented in February, we rolled out an enhanced version to enable citizens to store their vaccine pass in the app. In August the same year, we further enhanced the vaccine pass function in the app with the addition of red amber code to differentiate persons with higher transmission risks to support the latest isolation and quarantine policies. In order to facilitate citizens' registration for testing and to save queuing time on site for registration, a testing registration code function was added to the Reform Safe app in September last year. Members of the public could opt to store the user-designated QR code generated with pre-filled personal information. The process of on-site registration can be simplified by presenting the QR code for scanning at the testing points. Moreover, to tie in with the new policy of lowering the applicable age of vaccine pass to 5 and other related arrangements effective in the same month, we release a new version of Reform Safe swiftly to allow users to concurrently store vaccine passes of up to 8 accompanied persons who were exempted from using Reform Safe. It could facilitate users to present their vaccine pass on entry to restaurants and designated premises. In October, another new version of Reform Safe was released to simplify the self-declaration procedure. Confirmed cases with red code could conduct self-declaration with one click to complete isolation procedures, and the vaccine pass will be automatically reverted to blue. The Reform Safe app has assisted the government in implementing precise epidemic strategies in the past 2 years and was an important digital platform for fighting the epidemic in Hong Kong. As of December 2022, the number of downloads of Reform Safe has exceeded 9.5 million, with the support of over 140,000 public and private venues. More than 30,000 exposure notifications have been released through the app, and more than 500,000 citizens have undergone testing in community testing centers upon receipt of the exposure notifications. The Red Amber Code initiative have made more than 2.2 billion matchings, and more than 3 million code conversions have been performed. The government announced the lifting of requirements to scan venue QR code, vaccine pass, red, amber code, etc. in December 2022, alongside with the gradual lifting of various anti-epidemic measures. Lives in Hong Kong have gradually resumed normalcy in an orderly manner. Reform Safe has successfully run its course and will not be further updated. If members of the public want to use particular functions of the mobile app, such as testing registration code, they may keep the app in their mobile phones. The Office of the Government Chief Information Officer have also received instruction from the Department of Health and completed the deletion of all visit records in the system previously uploaded from Reform Safe of confirmed cases. The related system has ceased operation. We're grateful to members of the public, venue operators, and industry for being so supportive to Reform Safe and their efforts to contribute to Hong Kong's anti-epidemic work over the past 2 years. Looking forward, we will proactively promote and enhance the I Am Smart mobile app for providing a one-stop personalized digital services platform, which enables users to access government online services at ease. We aim to turn all government services online in 2 years and fully adopt I Am Smart within 3 years so as to realize the target of single portal for online government services. Mr. Duncan Chiu. Thank you, President. Thank you for your reply. President, I understand that Reform Safe has now suspended operation and we don't have to use the app anymore. But as a representative from the INT sector, now we've spent $9.5 million on this, and I think it has been widely used by the public, and it's a pity that it will not be used anymore. Before the phasing out of the app, I'd like to know whether you have discussed with other departments. Is there any possibility of using the app for other purposes? Thank you. Secretary. Now we have stopped using Reform Safe. That represents the end of an era. We very much hope that we can all look forward. Now many of the platforms and functions on Reform Safe have been transferred to I Am Smart. For instance, testing codes, vaccine pass, vaccination records, etc. They can be found in I Am Smart. So we will fully promote I Am Smart, which is an even more powerful smart platform. Through this platform, I'm sure we can more effectively help the public in many different ways. Mr. Yang Wing-kit. Now, Reform Safe covered over 90% of the population and is one of the most successful and important mobile app launched by the government so far. It was announced by the government that Reform Safe has run its course, and I find it regrettable. The government will fully promote I am Smart as an important platform. In fact, this is a very inconvenient platform. It's difficult to register, and I'd like to know whether the government will consider turning Reform Safe an integrated platform to provide different kinds of government services covering all those mentioned by the Secretary just now. So to follow the practice of the Guangdong province. Now, because we have vaccination records in Reform Safe with personal information, it can be used for verification, and we can use the app to access different government online services. Will the government turn this to an important platform, given that 90% of the population has got Reform Safe and I Am Smart hasn't reached that level of coverage? Now there will be 1.7 million users under I Am Smart. We have got 6.7 million people over 11 years old in Hong Kong, and over 25% of this group has got I Am Smart. Now, whether we talk about Singapore or other places, Hong Kong is the fastest to have over 1 million registered users. Within a month, we have got over 1 million registered users of I'm Smart. Our plan is that in 2 years' time, we will turn all government services online, and within 3 years, we'll realize the target of single portal for online government services. That is our target. As more government services are available online, the users of I'm Smart will increase correspondingly. As regards the registration of I'm Smart and the associated difficulties, now we will improve that. Now we require an ID card because we have the anti-forgery features in our ID card. And you have to take a photo of yourself in a specified way to ensure that it is a real image of the user. And there are over 160 points for registration of I Am Smart. We will provide more services to make it more convenient for registration. OGO is considering, without affecting the safety and reliability of I Am Smart, to streamline the registration process. Now, you can imagine that I Am Smart is even more powerful, providing a full range of digital services so that Hong Kong can really be a smart city. Thank you. Mr. Yang Wing-kit, thank you. As the pace of resuming normalcy increases, we no longer need to use the vaccine pass or vaccination record in Reform Safe. This is something to be happy with. But then people have to make bookings for quarantine-free travel to the mainland, and they need to do health declaration. I've heard that many members of the public, the elderly in particular, are not very familiar with the procedures. Since we have so many downloads of Reform Safe and we're so used to it, can we use it as a transitioning app so that while we adjust and enhance our anti-epidemic measures, we can provide more information to the public? Now, functions in Reform Safe, such as vaccination records and testing registration code, etc., all these functions can be found in I Am Smart. We have stopped updating of Reform Safe, but it has not been removed from the App Store. So if you so wish, you can keep your Reform Safe mobile app and you can use it if you so wish. So we've heard members' views that given that there are 9.5 million downloads of Reform Safe, and it's a pity if we stop using it. This goes to show that our colleagues have taken on board your comments and keep improving the app. We hope that in future, I Am Smart will have the same level of recognition in the community, and we want it to be better and simpler to use in the future. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, President. The Secretary said that the Reform Safe app has successfully served its historical mission and the app will not be further updated. But what is baffling is the Secretary said that if members would like to use individual functions of the mobile app, such as the attesting registration code, they may choose to keep the app. But I'd like to know problems associated with keeping the app. If OJO stop updating the app, who will provide the necessary support, such as cybersecurity? Providing support is costly, so will you consider migrating all these functions to another platform? Secretary. First, Reform Safe will keep some functions such as the testing registration code, etc. They have all gone through security verification, so it's perfectly used to save it. I agree with you that if we continue to provide backup services, well, it's costly, but members of the public can continue to use mobile app or a new platform in I Am Smart. Indeed, transition takes time. In the long run, Reform Safe will phase out because we have a more effective platform to serve the public. Professor William Wong. Now, it's mentioned in the policy address that we should build Hong Kong into a smart city to enhance the quality of life of Hong Kong people. It is planned that by the end of 2025, the government will use I'm Smart to provide single portal for online government services. Now, there are 1.6 million registered users of I'm Smart only. It is not really popular enough. And according to the Secretary, there are 9.5 million downloads of Reform Safe. And according to our survey, there are about 5 million users of Reform Safe. Is in fact more popular than I'm Smart. If I'm Smart can use users' information of Reform Safe, that will greatly enhance the popularity of I'm Smart. However, for the sake of privacy protection, will the government consider asking users of Reform Safe to opt in to migrate their information, their personal information, to I'm Smart, so that you can easily increase the number of users of I'm Smart, and then you can enhance the your plan to realize single portal for online government services. Secretary. Now, I'm Smart and Reform Safe have different target users. Reform Safe was introduced at exceptional times. It was a mobile app launched in a very speedy manner. There are objective requirements for using Reform Safe, and therefore the number of users grew quickly. Reform Safe's coverage and functions cannot be compared with I'm Smart in the future. As we have more government online services, more public and private organizations use online services, with more businesses available, then I'm sure more and more people will use I'm Smart. The government has got over 230 items of government services available on I'm Smart. We're going to launch more services, and we will step up publicity to educate the public on how to use I'm Smart for a daily business. Mr. Holden Chow. Indeed, Reform Safe has run this course, but it's really regrettable because there were 9.5 million downloads. Many people were using Li-Fong Safe. So can we migrate some of the functions to I'm Smart? And we can use that function for issuing notifications and disseminating information to the public. So will the Secretary consider this? Indeed, Li-Fong Safe as a whole has completed his historical mission. But for some of the functions, such as dissemination of information, can we use it? At least we can use it to disseminate information to the public. Can we make good use of this function? Secretary, the use of Li-Fong Safe provides valuable experience for using similar app for specific purposes. So when the need arises, we can launch a similar app very quickly, such as the booking system for quarantine-free travel. We're able to launch a system very quickly.
Last question seeking an oral reply. Mr. Dominic Lee, regarding the planning and management of recreational facilities under the LCSD, Leisure and Cultural Services Department, will the government inform this council? 1. As many members of the public have relayed that the LCSD's outdoor play equipment is insufficient and the design is monotonous, whether the department will consider introducing more types of play equipment and incorporate various themes for users to acquire different knowledge while playing. If so, the details, if not, for the reasons for that. 2. As it is learned that smart electronic payment means, such as payment by octopus, are still not yet available at a considerable number of sports venues under LCSD. While there are already smart parks and 5G parks on the mainland, then the competition on smart park creation was also held in Hong Kong in 2021. Whether LCSD will, by drawing reference from the practices on the mainland and the said competition, introduce smart parks to enhance the functions of play equipment and implement electronic payment at its fee-charging recreational facilities. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3, as it has been reported, that when an inter-school football match held earlier at the pitch under LCSD had not yet come to an end, the automatic sprinkler system at the pitch was suddenly activated, and this incident has called into question LCSD's standard of facility management. Whether LCSD has formulated working guidelines in the light of the incident to avoid the recurrence. If so, the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. The Leisure and Cultural Services Department, LCSD, provides various kinds of recreation and sports facilities such as indoor sports centers, outdoor pitches and courts, fitness equipment and children's playgrounds, etc. Regarding outdoor children's playgrounds, we endeavor to provide diversified, innovative and fun play spaces for children to enjoy playing, develop their mind and body, as well as promote their interaction with one another. We actively engage in the application of different smart technologies to enhance the daily management and maintenance of parks, as well as enrich the experience and enhance the pleasure of the users of park facilities. My reply to the questions raised by Mr. Lee is as follows. At present, the LCSD manages about 670 venues that offer outdoor children's playgrounds. Over the past 3 years, the LCSD provided a total of 26 additional children's playgrounds, and another 12 will be provided in the next 3 years. The LCSD will continue to identify suitable sites to provide more safe, fun, and popular play facilities for children to enjoy, build up their physical strength, as well as learning how to get along with one another through playing, thereby benefiting their physical and mental development. In recent years, the LCSD has tried to design the children's playgrounds with innovation. The children's playground in Tuen Mun Park is the first inclusive playground that provides diversified facilities for children of different ages and abilities to play together, which has been very well received by the public. The government further announced in the 2019 policy address that the LCSD would launch a 5-year plan of public play space transformation, or PPS, with an estimated total expenditure of nearly $700 million to transform more than 170 venues under its purview. The transformed Shong Ling Street Playground in Wong Tai Sin was opened in December last year. Among the 4 transformation projects to be completed this year, the PPS at Sham Shui Po Park is the largest one, covering an area of 6,400 square meters. When building and transforming public play spaces, the LCSD will consider adopting different themes, providing various degrees of challenges and fun, and incorporating more natural and environmentally friendly elements with a view to enabling the children to learn through playing. The LCSD will also hire professional firms to engage different stakeholders and solicit their views through workshops and questionnaire surveys to strengthen community participation. Furthermore, the LCSD and the Architectural Services Department even co-organized a design competition for PPS in 2022. The design ideas and concepts of the winning entries will be adopted when implementing the transformation projects in the future. At present, the majority of hirers of fee-charging recreation and sports facilities under the LCSD make booking and payment with multiple electronic payment methods under the online booking system Leisure Link System, or LLS, or its mobile version. A small portion of hirers make the booking via self-service kiosks and pay by Octopus, or via booking counters by cash. Currently, the LCSD is developing a brand new intelligent sports and recreation services booking and information system at full steam to replace the existing LLS. The new system will support more e-payment methods, including Octopus and faster payment system on the internet, in the mobile app, and at self-service kiosks. The new system is expected to be rolled out in the 3rd quarter of this year. Booking of recreational and sports facilities will then become faster and more convenient for the public. Meanwhile, the LCSD is proactive in adopting different smart technologies to promote the transformation of parks into smart ones, including collaboration with the EMSD to launch a smart toilet pilot scheme at Kowloon Park this month. The program aims to enhance the management efficiency and service quality of the toilets with the use of Internet of Things and sensors. We will review the program and assess its effectiveness to facilitate consideration of future arrangements. The LCSD will launch a trial scheme to develop an IT system which will digitize inspection reports and records of maintenance progress of facilities in our parks, such as children's playgrounds, fitness equipment, and sports equipment. This will enhance efficiency and reduce the time for temporary suspension of facilities due to malfunctioning or damage. The LCSD also proactively supports the Development Bureau scheme of tree labels with QR codes. We attach labels on roadside trees maintained by the LCSD and in the parks to facilitate reporting of problematic trees, enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of tree management, as well as providing the public with more knowledge about trees. 3. The 42 natural turf pitches and 41 artificial turf pitches currently under the management of the LCSD are generally equipped with the automatic irrigation systems that sprinkle water regularly every day to ensure that the turf pitches are in good condition at all times. Irrigation has always been scheduled to hours without booking to avoid causing disturbance to hirers. The artificial turf pitch of Shakib May Park, equipped with an automatic irrigation system, was hired by an organizer of an inter-school football competition from 3 to 6 p.m. on the 12th of December 2022 to host 2 matches of inter-school football competition for secondary schools. Meanwhile, the automatic irrigation system had previously been set to operate at 6:07 p.m. in order not to affect the use of the venue by the next hirer at 6:30 p.m. The second match was originally scheduled to start at 4:15 p.m. The organizer, however, delayed its starting time to 4:50 p.m. eventually. Therefore, the said match could not finish by the end of the originally high period, and that's 6 p.m. In response to the request made by the person in charge of the competition, the venue staff allowed the match to continue, but did not turn off the automatic irrigation system in view of the actual situation. This led to the sudden onset of water sprinkling before the match ended and affected the venue users. The LCSD has apologized for the incident and to the persons affected and cautioned the staff concerned. To avoid recurrence of similar incidents, the LCSD has asked venue staff to communicate with organizers well beforehand in order to learn about the arrangements of the competitions or events and to request the organizers to book sufficient time slots for the competitions or events to be held. The LCSD will also make arrangements to meet the actual needs of the organizers as far as possible where circumstances allow, including adjusting the operation time of the irrigation system to avoid disruption. The LCSD has organized a briefing session for frontline staff of the artificial turf soccer pitch of Shekime Park and other venues. Staff from relevant works departments have explained to the staff on the operation of the automatic irrigation system to ensure that the latter are well versed in adjusting the operating time of the system. Mr. Dominic Lee. Just now, Secretary said that the LCSD has already apologized for the incident and cautioned the staff. And I know that, but according to media reports, this football match is one between St. Joseph's College and DBS, and the organizer at the time already communicated with the venue staff. And yet, according to the venue staff, the operating time of the system could not be changed because it has been preset in the computer. So which version is true? Is it that they knew how to adjust the operating time and refused to do so, or they did not know how to adjust it, or that it truly could not be adjusted? Who was telling a lie? Secretary, Mr. President, as I said in my reply, in this case in particular, the irrigation system had previously been set to operate at 6:07 p.m. and the organizer originally booked a slot from 3 to 6 p.m. for 2 football matches. But because of a delay, the venue staff on the spot responsible for managing the artificial turf pitch exercised discretion and allowed the match to continue beyond the slot booked. And yet, because the staff were not familiar with the operation of the automatic irrigation system, hence the incident. Now, no lie was deliberately told. It's just that the staff were not familiar with the adjustment of the automatic irrigation system. And as I said in the reply, we already engaged the frontline staff in a briefing session for staff from works departments to explain to them the operation of the staff of the system. We hope to prevent the recurrence of the incident. Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Now, Mr. Dominic Lee asked a question about the management of facilities under the LCSD. Sorry, it's a question asked by Mr. Kenneth Fogg. The question referred to the monotonous design and the suggestions of smart parks and 5G parks. And according to the Secretary's reply, the LCSD is deploying technology to facilitate management of the facilities, but not to benefit users. I read in this reply that there is something about a smart toilet pilot program and smart technologies being deployed for inspection reports to be digitized, tree labels with QR codes. But in fact, we can have smart jogging trails for users of joggers to know more about their physical condition, their mileage, etc. And that's all about deploying technology and how we can apply technology and that can truly benefit users. In fact, in the mainland, there are over 100 such equipment in smart parks to facilitate users. I understand that the government has a 10-year blueprint to upgrade and transform public play space. I want to know how the government will make good use of smart technologies to upgrade the LCSD venues into smart ones. Secretary. Mr. President, as per what Mr. Kenneth Fox said, how we can deploy the latest technologies to better serve LCSD venue users, I think we should consider from 2 perspectives. First, we can enhance the efficiency of management of venues through deployment of technology. For example, as I said in the reply, we can shorten the time of suspension of facilities and enhance efficiency. The second perspective is, like the member said, how we can enrich the user's experience in using our facilities. Now, we haven't set out in detail in our reply, but in fact, we are making progress. For example, we now allow users to make use of their mobile phones to learn more about how an equipment is to be used. And we also allow records to be kept, providing users with information such as the time used on a particular piece of equipment. And also, as I said in my reply, in terms of tree management, apart from attaching QR code labels to facilitate tree management, members of the public, likewise, can also learn more about the species of the trees, the features of the trees through scanning the QR codes. So on different fronts, we are sparing no effort. And this will also help LCSD in improving the facilities and venues in the future. Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad to hear that the administration will be putting more thought on the design of a public play space and playgrounds. Perhaps they should walk the extra mile and collaborate with local art groups. For example, we have many parks in Hong Kong, and we can adopt different themes for different parks. For example, there may be parks with traditional Chinese cultural characteristics and parks with the work of local designers for local artists to put installations or sculptures there. This will allow more room for our local artists to develop, and this will also make our parks more attractive, thus boosting tourism. Now, of course, it also hinges on some legal issues. In the past, we used to procure from the market. Now we can adopt a collaborative mode. Is food for thought for you. Secretary, Mr. President, thank you for the suggestions. Indeed, we are thinking along these lines. There are so many parks in Hong Kong. So, say for some larger parks in certain districts, perhaps a particular theme can be adopted. It can be one of a cultural focused or sports focused theme, so that when the many parks in Hong Kong all carry their respective unique characteristics, it will bring diversity to Hong Kong in general, and it will be attractive to both locals and tourists alike. In other words, apart from visiting the nearest park in your neighborhood, you can also reach out to more interesting parks in the territory. Now, as long as there are some feature attractions in these parks, such as special plants or art installations, users will be attracted to visit different parks and use the different facilities. Dr. Lee also mentioned some operational issues we need to iron out. I'm sure we will take small steps in resolving the issues. Mr. Dennis Leung, before the pandemic, I visited the mainland, South Korea, Macau, to look at their recreation facilities. And I understand in these places, equipment are put in place for children and elderly to exercise in their parks. But according to the Secretary's reply, in 2019, the government announced that the 5-year plan of public play space transformation will be launched. It's been 3 years, and the government plans to transform more than 170 venues under the LCSD's purview. I want to know whether a more innovative blueprint will be adopted so that we can also have elements of tourism to enhance the development potential of the venues. Secretary, Mr. President, we have larger parks and smaller parks in Hong Kong. Regarding the 170 venues mentioned just now, our goal is to enhance the quality of these venues through transformation. And in the process, we also emphasize community participation. That is why we've spent some time to start the public engagement process. For example, we engage the residents in the neighborhood in discussion to see how the facilities can meet their needs. In terms of future development, we'll draw on previous experience and feedback received and adopt the merits of good design and incorporate them into new play facilities. Now, in drawing up the blueprint, we need to accumulate experience and collect feedback so as to cater for the needs of the public. And this is where we're heading. Mr. Chu Kwok-keung. For outdoor children's playgrounds managed by the government, the design has all along been monotonous for decades. Children don't find them attractive. Only when there are new housing estates or new development areas will the government adopt an innovative approach in its design. My question is, how is the government going to improve the design of existing outdoor playgrounds to enhance their functions and their attractiveness? Secretary. Of course, we would like to roll out new facilities to be provided on outdoors children's playground to make it more enjoyable for children to play and learn there. But quite often, instead of having something really complicated, children can really enjoy themselves just on say a football pitch. If you allow them to play football, I'm sure Mr. Chu, as a school principal, must know that. Of course, we can incorporate different elements in a single venue, but when it comes to maintenance, progress will be slow as you need to find spare parts for different equipment. So, to respond to your question on monotonous design, we wanted to expedite and facilitate management and maintenance, as it would be easier to find spare parts for the same equipment. But now we think different. Now, say for a slide for children, it remains to be an attractive piece of equipment. Of course, you can always incorporate more elements to a traditional slide, but at the same time, we need to strike a balance between the children's enjoyment and the physical and mental development of children. More importantly, we encourage children to get along with each other and play on the same playground.